I'm Alex, and today I want to take a minute to talk about the views inside of Nuke. A lot of people tend to think that it's something that's strictly used for stereo comping, but there's actually a lot you can use it for that can be very helpful to you. So, for example, I work in commercials, and sometimes there are hero shots that the client would also like to show as very short clips in social media. Sometimes they can have different length than the shot. They can have different aspect ratios, right? So they might want it to be square, or it might, instead of being 16 by 9, it might be a 9 by 16. And what that means is that you're going to be basing it all off of one comp, but then you have to almost duplicate that script to generate those other outputs that have slight differences to them. Like an asset might be a different color, or things might be placed in a slightly different position, but everything else remains the same. So instead of you having to tend to multiple scripts, you can just keep it under one script and just use the view system to control each one of those outputs. And I'll show you how that works in a minute. Another really good use for that, if you're maybe working on useful for commercials, but maybe for something like film, is you might be doing a lot of look dev on a shot, and sometimes what we tend to do is let's say you have a grade node, right? And you like that one, but you want to keep it around because it's still they're on the fence whether they want to go with that or not, and then you have multiple iterations of it. And what ends up happening is that you have a series of grade nodes with notes and stuff about what it was, or you have to go back into versions to find what that was looking like or how you built that. So this kind of solves that in the sense that you can just keep everything live in your script. You can keep all those versions inside and just stream them under different views. So I'm going to show you how you can use that to your advantage. So here in the node graph, right, you can just hit S to open the project settings. And what we're interested in here is the views tab here. And as you see, by default, we have main. So we just have the one view, right? That's how we always do that. That's how it comes by default. So you can add more views here by clicking the plus button. So I'm going to go ahead and create two, right? For the example we're going to build here, it's going to be our main output, which is going to be the 16 by 9 that we have here on screen. And then I'm going to set up a social that's going to be a 1 by 1 aspect ratio, and then another social that's going to be a 9 by 16 aspect ratio. So the main I'm going to leave just as main. I'm not going to change the name or anything for it. And then for view number 2, I'm going to go ahead and change the name here, and I'm going to rename it to something that is easy for me to see when I'm in my script. So I'm going to say it's going to be a social underscore 1 by 1. And then for the other view, I'm going to call it social, and this is going to be the 9 by 16, right? So it's nice and easy. You can quickly see what's going on. Then I like giving it colors, and you'll see why that's important in a minute, at least to me. You can just, let's say I'm going to keep the main as red, and you can just use as any color you like, really. And then green for this one, and finally I'm going to give this one blue, right? Then once you have your names and your colors set up, I like clicking here the use colors and UI tick, and you see we have our views here, right? But they're all the same color. But if I click this, now everything's color coded, and that's just part of it. It also affects the script, and you'll see why in a minute. So okay, I'm gonna leave that click there, right? And then I'm gonna show you how to take advantage of this, right? Let me just close this here. So let's say we have our plate, our very exciting comp here of a plate and an asset on top, and we've transformed this into place, right? But let's say we want to do individual treatments for our different deliveries here, right? How do we access those views now? You can, it's a series of nodes, right? And if you just say here split and join, split and join views, right? And that's what that's going to do is it's going to split for every one of the views you've created and then join them back together, right? So if we compare what we see here and what we see here, it's exactly the same, right? Nothing is happening. And that makes sense because we are basically returning to where we were a minute ago, right? It's just splitting it. And now, because they're split, it's giving you control over each and every one of those views. And the reason why it's important to name these views in a way that's easy for you to understand what's going on is that the views here, right, are going to have that name attached to them, so you can quickly see what view you're modifying. And same for the colors, right? You can if you have a big script and there's a lot of that stuff happening, then you can quickly see, okay, so there's a split happening here. Let me see what's going on there. Instead of, if you keep this off, again, it just looks like regular nodes, right? So to me, this is kind of a must-have, just so you don't make any mistakes. I wanted to give you a bit of a disclaimer here, and that is the fact that when you create a node, right? When you create a node right now, let's say, for example, a roto node, you see that our views here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a shape just so that it enables the views here. You see we have a drop down that's saying what views do you want to apply this to, right? So 9 times out of 10 you're gonna want to affect everything, but know that you can just keep it specific to a view. I like if I'm gonna do anything to a view, to a specific view, I want to be very obvious in my script, and I want to split that view, right, so that I can see that what I'm doing instead of just keeping it hidden within a stream, right? If I were to do something like that, I most definitely want to keep everything on, so that affects everything. Okay. However, if you were to create the views after you've already done a lot of work on your comps, what you're going to find is that you're going to have a bunch of nodes. Let's say you have a bunch of rotos you had already done. All those rotos will only be referencing the main view. So just know that if you create your views after you've done work in your shot, some nodes, like for example the rotor node, the paint node, the write nodes, all of those have the views tab here. You're going to have to go back into those and make sure that, let's say this one had that roto that we were saying before, but you created this before the views, you'll find that it'll default to this because it was created when only the main view was there, right? So make sure that if you've added views to your script, you go back to all of those nodes and then you enable those views again in those nodes, okay? So just a bit of a disclaimer, because you might create it and you see, oh, it's all broken. It's like, well, yes, it's only affecting the main. Okay, so now we have our splits. What can we do now? So this is the beauty of this, right? So let's say we'll circle back to this, and we now have our different formats, right? So we have our 16 by 9, and we have our 1 by 1, and we have our 9 by 16, right? So I'm going to go ahead and detach these guys, and again, go ahead and split and join, right? Let's do that, okay? And then, because everything's neatly labeled and I've prepared my crops here, I am going to say for the social, I want it to be a 1 by 1. Sorry, for the social 1 by 1, and then for the 916, it's a 916, right? So pretty straightforward. Again, if we look through here and here, you're not going to see anything because we're defaulting to main. However, at any point, you can just cycle through your views up here, right? So, okay, now we have our crops ready, and let's say we're happy with our main, right? But maybe when the client sees the version for the 1 by 1, they're not, as I was saying. So let's say that the client isn't happy with the placement of the asset on the 1 by 1. So you can go back here, right? And on your split here for the asset, you can just say, okay, so let's maybe move this transform over to the main because we're happy for how it behaves there, right? And make a copy of it for all the other for all of our other splits here, right? And now because we're looking at our 1 by 1, I'm going to go ahead and nudge that guy in position, right? So now what happens is if we look at our views here and then say we compare, see, it's actually being corrected, but not for the main. If I go ahead here and enable and disable this transform, you'll see nothing is happening because it's not affecting the other streams, only the social 1 by 1. Now, if we switch to our social 1 by 1 and we enable and disable this, you'll see you're only affecting that view. So that's the power of this. You're keeping a lot of information in one script. Alternatively, you can just create different scripts for this, but that's what we're trying to keep away from, because if an asset gets updated, or a plate changes, or any other kind of work that you're doing, a key, all that stuff, you don't want to be constantly copying and pasting a bunch of work that you've done in one script and making sure that the other one or two or three scripts have the exact same versions of everything. So that way, one script, keep it simple, and through the views, you just pipe it in and out as you need, and that's gonna be very, very helpful. So, okay, next, if we look here, right, we've fixed that, and then we check our 9x16, and then a bit of the same problem, right? We can just come here and modify our transform, and let's say maybe for this format it's a bit too big, so that's too much. Okay, so let's say a bit smaller and a bit lower, because we want to keep it clear. And then the client maybe also wants this to have a bit of a different grade for that asset, so let's say this one is meant to be dark, and this one is meant to be also a different color. So if we look here, right, and we check our gain, let's say this one is meant to be more purple. So if we look at our views here again and we cycle through them, we have our original, we have our 1x1, and we have our 9x16, all with a bit of slightly different treatments at asset level. And it's just an example. Like, you can split and join as much as you want throughout your script. This is of course just a very simple example, but it shows the power of why this is important. And then another thing I wanted to tell you is that not only can you do stuff like, grades, transforms, all that stuff, but you can even do retimes, right? So let's say I'm going to go ahead and split and join here again, right? So split and join, and organize these guys. And then, okay, so let's say our main is our plate as it comes, but maybe for some of the socials, they might be retimed because they need to be faster for social media, let's say, right? So of course, you don't want to do, you probably want to do it with a Chronos, but let's say this one is going to be 10% faster. So I'm going to put it at a retime of 1.1. And for this guy, it's actually been offset in time. So this has a time offset. Oh, not retime, but time offset of 10 frames, right? So again, it's only affecting each individual stream, and the main remains vanilla, right, as it comes. So you can really pipe anything through these views, and that's the power of it. Okay, so now we are at this point where we are happy. We have all of our views doing what they should be doing. We've joined our views again. Let's switch back to our main here, and now, okay, can we do something about the outputs? And the answer is yes. You can create a write node here. And what you'll see is that the write node also has the views, right? So if we look here at the views, you'll see we have the same options we had at that roto before. So we have main, social, and social. So the 1x1 and the 916. And then you can say, let's say, I'm going to say for this one, I want to be main. So make sure you disable the others, right? And I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this guy and another copy. And I'm going to connect it here, and then for this one, I want it to be a social 1x1, so make sure you disable the main. And then for the last one here, I'm going to say social 916 and disable main, right? And I always like to add labels to my nodes. I like to be very obvious in case I forget, because I'm doing many other things, or in case someone else grabs my script, it's easy for them to read what's going on. So I'm going to say here value views, right? And if I do that, I close my brackets, you'll see it now says main, right? So I'm going to copy this over to my other write nodes. And of course, it's optional. You don't need to do this. It's just nice for you to see what's going on. Okay, so now we have all of our nice and obvious write nodes of what they are doing, and that way you know that you've selected the correct one because it's only printing what it's meant to be writing out. But of course, you can again cycle through here. I like to be very obvious again, very explicit with my comp, so I'm going to say here again split and join, right? And I don't want to join now, I only want to split, and now I'm going to do this so that I can very quickly, oh, there we go, so that I can very quickly look at cycle through my outputs instead of just having it to do through here. You can, this is optional, it's not going to change anything. It's just, again, just to keep it obvious so that when you look at stuff from afar, you can see, okay, there's splits happening. Uh, and that's kind of it. You can, of course, all these write nodes can have different frame ranges, the same flexibility as if you only had one, but now you have full control of your different streams. So I figured I'd share this with you. Use it. It's there. It's really really helpful, especially when you're doing a bunch of tests and stuff. You might just have like test streams that you don't want to throw out, or just don't want to have stuff labeled and set to the side that then you'll forget what it was doing. That way it's just still integrated and you can just tap into it at any point by splitting the view, right? So you can just always, again, so split and join the views, and then that way you can just do that at any point. Hopefully that was helpful and something that you can add to your arsenal. And yeah, let me know if there's anything else you've been doing with the view system, because I really like it. All right, bye.